God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Benigno. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor, and I am here breaking down the Karen Read case. So, not a great day if you are the Commonwealth from my view. Now, the day starts without us in the courtroom. We have John's niece, Kaye, testifying. Well, no, actually, the day starts with Hank playing another two of Karen's clips. Now, we're going to get to those in just a minute, but it's interesting. And after you see them, you'll think it's typical Hank because, of course, he has John's niece testify, Kaye, who's 17, just following these two clips, which are about how Karen feels about the relationship, or actually how John feels about the relationship with her. Two clips that I have a lot to say about and we'll say more about in just a minute. So the day starts without us in the courtroom. John's niece, Kaye, testifies, and she testifies that on direct that John and Karen, their relationship changed after Aruba, that they just were more cold and distant to each other, that John had, I guess, had made statements like maybe the relationship had run its course, whatever. She also mentions, I guess, favoring Patrick. I don't know. I mean, that seems like the kind of thing that any teenage girl or, 12-year-old girl, 14-year-old girl might feel or say or think. Who knows? But then on cross, I feel like this gets leveled a bit because Yannetti was the one, and I think probably the right call there, to do the cross on Kaye. And he gets her to admit that she had a good relationship with Karen. Karen did lots for her. She went to her basketball games. She had sleepovers at Karen's house. That Karen was basically filling in as a mom like figure to her throughout the 2 years that they were together, and testifies that there was no violence in their relationship at all. She did say, I guess, that Karen used to yell louder than John. No great surprise there. And then, of course, talks about the morning of the incident where Karen was acting crazy, like she'd never seen her before, woke her up and was saying that maybe John got hit by a plow. I don't know. Again, I don't really know what to make of it. It sounds to me like at the end, it was kind of a wash. That's my feeling. Then we have these two crime scene services troopers testify. Again, it feels to me like Hank is just avoiding people like Trooper Paul by calling these two guys that none of us know anything about.
That data point in general was consistent with something that you would see within data of a pedestrian striker striking something else. I do go in my report saying I can't say that's definitively where a pedestrian was struck. It wasn't definitively. Sorry, in my report, I do say I can't say that is definitively where the pedestrian struck. Definitively, yes.
Okay, so you're going to have to slow down and speak up, okay?
And in the end, I think this backfires horribly. Lally does the direct examination of these guys, and first off, they're short and sweet, fine, but basically, these guys are called to testify about having come in to do a proper crime scene investigation for one day. Trooper Zach Clark, comes in and says he came in, he took pictures. The next crime scene services guy named Evan Brent comes in, says, yeah, I took a bunch of pictures. I looked at the car. We see all of these pictures of John's Chevy Traverse. Like, why don't we have these same kinds of pictures, but for the car that matters? Oh, yeah, it's the murder weapon. Why weren't these pictures taken on the day that the car was confiscated at Karen's house, right? I mean, there's like 15 pictures of John's Chevy Traverse in the driveway at One Meadows. Like, who cares? And the defense was very quick to point this out. And I think ultimately with these two guys, Trooper Clark and Evan Brent, the defense does a great job of making two key points. Number one, that in all likelihood, the entire investigation should have been handled like this. And these guys were accessible. They could have brought them in at any time, but they never did. And then number two, we have both of these guys who seem pretty distant from the case, like that the homeowner was an actual cop, didn't know that at the time. So these two guys who seem like they have very little investment personally in the case, and they don't seem to have too much of a problem admitting, number one, that Proctor was in charge of whatever it was that they were doing, that he met them at the scene, that he was there before them, that whatever they were taking photos of, he was the one directing the whole thing. And number two, that, oh yeah, and this was particularly true in the case of Evan Brent, he was the lead detective. Yannetti asks, were you aware that Michael Proctor was the lead investigator on the case? Answer, yes, I was aware. Right, so it's like, okay, so how was that helpful to the prosecution? I have no idea. It didn't seem helpful to them at all. Maybe they're thinking, oh, okay, we have to lay the foundation for whoever we're bringing in next. But this seemed to me to do nothing more than make it even more suspect that this investigation was not only shoddy, but was intentionally shoddy. Because I'll tell you, and this is going on for me, and I know that this investigation was not only shoddy, but was intentionally shoddy. And I'm having more of an awareness. I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this really was like a frame job. I mean, I think they thought they were framing the person who was guilty, so it was okay, but they were planting evidence. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. I think that's on lock. I mean, if I am on that jury, my mind is almost made up that this was some kind of intentional frame job. Who cares why? Okay. Then they bring in Brian Gallerani. He is from the Needham police, and he was called in to take DNA from both Proctor and Buchanan. Great. We don't know what they did with that DNA, and it's never explained whether that DNA was compared with anything, but maybe that's coming. I don't know. For now, all we know is that this guy, this police officer, came and took their DNA. But on cross, Yannetti points out or asks the question, did you take the DNA of Canton Police Chief Kenneth Berkowitz? No. Did you take the DNA of Lieutenant Brian Tully from the Massachusetts State Police, Norfolk County DA's office? No. So this seemed like nothing more than really good opportunities for the defense to draw all of our attention to who's really responsible for whatever kind of frame job is going on here, and that they were up. Just those two were left out of the DNA collection. Then we have Maureen Hartnet. This was a fun one. So she's supposed to be the crime scene analyst who comes in and she collects the hair off of the bumper and she finds broken glass. And she's supposed to be the home run witness for the prosecution that finds all the evidence that makes it very crystal clear that John was hit by the Lexus. And then there's Robert Alessi, who basically shoots holes up and down her testimony and makes her look like an incompetent, lying jackass, which I think she wasn't trying to lie. She was basically just defending herself, but it wasn't a good look for the Commonwealth.
You're saying this is a reflection?
I can't testify,
Okay.
so I'm asking you. With Your Honor's permission, if we could go back to the other picture.
Okay.
And you could zoom in. Do you see a reverse B in that picture?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I'm sorry, a reverse B as in Bob?
No, could you zoom in on each of the stickers for me, please?
We'll do whatever you would like to do to answer the question. So
Sure. Okay. And then if I could just see the other sticker, please.
Absolutely.
Yes, I believe that is a reverse B, correct?
And doesn't that mean that it's a mere reflection and that there's only one sticker that you put on, and therefore only one volume of glass associated with one sticker?
Can you say that question again? I can't hear you too well.
I'm sorry, I will stay by the microphone. Is this microphone picking up? So therefore, can you now conclude, because of the reflection and because of the reverse B, that there is only, in actuality, and there was only in actuality, one sticker and one B, and therefore one volume of glass associated with this bumper?
I don't know specifically that it's a reflection. It's not unusual for me to use the same letter on a sticker if I'm going to collect the items of evidence together. So if I had written it, on top or on the bottom of the scale on one of them and on the top of the scale on the other one, that is a possibility. It's difficult for me to tell by this picture. What I can tell you is that all the items of glass or apparent glass that were present on the bumper were collected together.
So all in all, a lot happened, none of which scored any points in my mind for the Commonwealth. But I want to talk more about the two clips that Hank thinks he's so brilliantly starting the day with, because in Hank's mind, I guess these two clips say something about the state of the relationship between John and Karen. And I think he thinks that this changes the motive that maybe Brian Higgins would have. I don't know. It's total absurdity. And what I want to do is I want to explain to you exactly what these statements were really about, why Karen said them, and what they really meant. And certainly it doesn't mean anything close to what Hank Brennan thinks it does. Of course, not surprising at all. So let's take a look at those clips now.
This innuendo here that you guys have really been going at it. This was sort of had like a last date element to it. Was that going on?
That was not going on. John made it clear to me, I'm never breaking up with you. Not never that we're in this good or bad, but you're the best person I've ever.
Would ask to show clip 19.
I don't think, I don't see how John would have known about my text with Brian. And I'm not sure if he knew he would have reacted very strongly. I think we would have broken up, but I don't think John would have lost it and caused a fight. I didn't feel like John's emotions with me got really strong.
First of all, it doesn't surprise me that Karen would say that she doesn't think that John cared that much. That tracks with everything else that we've seen from Karen. For somebody with this kind of attachment style, abandonment is the big fear. The big fear is that they're going to get surprised. They're going to come home one day thinking everything is normal and then get hit with it in this completely earth-shattering way. We also get verification of that from some of the texts that Karen sends to Brian Higgins, where she talks about how devastating loss is. So we know for Karen, abandonment is exactly the opposite of what she wants. And we can feel her chasing John. This is what she's doing when she's like, you're cheating, you're cheating, you're cheating, you're cheating, you're cheating, you must be cheating, you must be cheating. Every indicator that we have from John is that he wants to be with Karen, but Karen has a deep, deep insecurity. Okay. This is not a secure human being. And I could say a lot more about that, but I'm not going to now. People that are deeply insecure, they seek validation from the outside world. I feel like, in a way, most younger women are like this. And I mean young, teenage women, early 20s. Women want attention. They want people to tell them they're beautiful, tell them they're pretty, tell them they're thin enough, tell them they're thick enough, whatever the case may be. Tell them they're good enough. And the hope is that as we grow up, we become more secure and we become more confident and we develop what often is referred to as ego strength. Ego strength is a firm sense of self that doesn't require constant validation from the outside world. Like, I know I'm good enough, whether or not you constantly tell me I'm good enough. I know you love me, or you will tell me that you don't want to be in a relationship with me anymore. I don't expect that you're cheating on me. If you are cheating on me, I would assume you'd tell me and leave me, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you develop over time with wisdom and age and hopefully, right? But if you don't, what you're going to get is a lot of what we're seeing with Karen and John. And with time away from him, meaning he's not there anymore to say, don't worry, I do want to be with you. I do care about you. I do love you. I do need you. Without that validation, that little validation that John gave her, and I do think he was a smart guy. He was savvy. He knew what she wanted. He knew when she was playing games. He knew who she was. And I think a lot of the time did give her that validation. But at the end, he was in a tough place, like psychologically, because of the kids, because of the demands on his life, because of the situation with Karen, the frustrating fighting, the overall general frustration that John was experiencing at the end of his life. He wasn't giving it to her then. So with that, in combination with the distance from John and his validation, she's able to tell herself that he didn't really love her that much, or maybe he was kind of using her to be a babysitter for the kids. It would also be a way to defend against this situation. So if you think about it, put yourself in Karen's shoes and think about what she's going through. John's family ruined her life. This whole group of people has ruined her life because of John. So it must be very complicated. Her feelings for him must be very complicated. And there's probably a part of her that knows it would be easier if she didn't have strong feelings for him. And if he didn't have strong feelings for her, because then it would be easier to be angry at Peg O'Keefe, Paul O'Keefe, to kind of fight against that current and to no longer feel loss over the kids. Because no matter what anybody says, Karen loved those children. I have every reason to believe that from her words and actions. And I'm sure the devastation, again, loss is the big fear for Karen. And I'm sure her thing is thinking about the loss those kids have endured. They lost their mother. They lost their father. Then their surrogate dad, the only dad they knew. I mean, they were 3 and 6 when their parents died, right? So they probably don't remember their parents, not consciously. So John was really the only parent they had. And then Karen swoops in. I know her and Kaylee were very close. I am sure that when Karen thinks about what those kids are left with, Peg O'Keefe, Paul O'Keefe, Aaron O'Keefe, I'm sure she feels devastated for their loss. And that is also something to want to protect against, to keep herself feeling safe and able to fight against the current that is coming from the O'Keefe family. So I know that Brennan wants to paint this as some way for Karen to rationalize how she treated John. But in actuality, this is probably what she really believes at this point. I mean, I think Karen really believes that, number one. Number two, the first clip that we saw, which was about John saying he would never leave her. He probably did say that. Now, why would you say that if you're John O'Keefe? Because he was no dummy and he was very aware that Karen was anxious, right? She was anxious. She constantly needed his affirmation, his approval, his validation. Think about the last set of text messages the day that, Hank is claiming they were in this big fight in the 10 seconds before when they left the waterfall and they got to 34th Fairview. Hank Brennan is claiming they had an all-out war and John broke up with her, and that was like 9 minutes. So no, that's not what happened. What we also saw in that space is that while they were arguing and while John was saying things like, yeah, we've been fighting a lot lately, and sorry if I'm not so lovey-dovey the way that you are after a fight, right? He also was absolutely enraged over the fact that she was going to hire somebody else to come look at the water heater. He lost it. He was furious about that. Why would you bring somebody else in when me or my father could come? Then he starts talking about how I hope he's hot, like the water heater guy from down the street, right? And this is the kind of stuff that Karen needed, actually, to feel like John cared about her at all. So this is the kind of stuff that you guys, this is what we see. This is why teenagers that are in love relationships, it doesn't end well. Early love relationships, they're hot and heavy and they fizzle out fast because you're two very insecure people at a very difficult, insecure developmental stage looking for constant validation from each other. And guess what? You can't get that anyway. You can't. There's no amount of validation that a person's going to give to a person with an insecure, anxious attachment, and they're going to feel okay. As much as John could, Karen would probably feel safe for 3 minutes before she would turn around and need it again. That is where Brian Higgins came into the picture. Brian Higgins was a way for Karen to feel wanted, desired, cared for, validated. Like she matters, like she's beautiful. And even in those exchanges, we continually see Karen put herself down, right? And in ways where Brian's like, come on, Karen, you're hot. Maybe she knows on paper people think she's attractive, but in truth, she does not really know that. And I don't think, sitting here today, I think it's really easy for Karen to believe that John wasn't in love with her and was only with her because of the convenience, because of her role with the kids and the help that he needed. It's also the reason why I speculate that Karen didn't realize that Brian had true feelings for her. I've asked myself many times why it is that Karen would have left John alone with Brian Higgins. She knew his vehicle. I'm sure she saw that he was there. She knew he was at the waterfall. She knew there was a good chance that he was going to go back to the Albert's house. She saw Brian Albert, Chris Albert. They were all hanging out with Brian Higgins. She knew that. So what was she doing leaving John alone with Brian Higgins? I've asked myself that many times. And the conclusion that I've come to is twofold. One, she really didn't understand that Brian Higgins saw Karen as, a hot woman who was indicating she might want to be with him and saw that as a real opportunity for him. It's not uncommon. A lot of the time, men assume that attractive women know they're attractive, know they could get any guy they want. Of course they know, they use it, whatever. But in actuality, a person like Karen Reed doesn't know that. And probably completely underestimated how Brian Higgins really felt about her. completely underestimated it. She probably thought the fact that she had made these advances towards him and he didn't try to have a sexual relationship with her the way that most guys probably, or not most, the way that many guys may have tried to. I'm sure when she went to go have the drink with him, the night that on the stand, Brian Higgins tells us it was quick. They had this weird interaction. They barely finished a drink. And then he said, oh, text me when you get home. And she does. I am sure that Karen figured he was going to make a move because 8 out of every 10 men would have. But the way that Brian Higgins is talking to her is like he wants to really give it a shot. He's telling her in every way that he can, I don't just want to hook up. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that easy. I want to be in a relationship. I want the real thing. I've always liked you. In my mind, there's no way that Higgins could have been more clear about what his intentions were and what he felt for Karen. He liked her. And the strangest thing about that text exchange that Yuri Buchanan is too fucking stupid to see, that Michael Proctor is too fucking stupid to see, is that he didn't write back when Karen said John is dead. If you go back and you look at those text messages, the most bizarre moment, the most odd and unpredictable moment, given their interactions to that point, is that he doesn't respond after that. That is weird. That is weird. And you want to tell me it's because Higgins thought that she intentionally killed John? No, absolutely not. I do not buy it. I know that's not the case. So you can say that to yourself. I don't know. You anti-free Karen Read people can tell yourself whatever the hell you want. But that is not what happened. Most people don't understand romantic relationships at all. Okay? They don't. I just happen to be studying psychology for the last 27 years. So that, and have had a lot of relationships and have had a lot of training. Many of you might know who my dad is. That's the guy that taught me a lot about relationships.
I don't play games. Who's kidding who?
Why should you at this stage, right?
There's nothing. Yeah. Here it is. Victor Cruz dance. Oh, Victor. Uncle Steve, you should come on with us.
Yeah.
It's time for Steve Cohen to come on with myself and Evan.
What's the first question?
Two big Met fans. The first question I'm going to ask him is, you're going to retire Doc and Daryl's number?
Oh, that's number one. Okay.
Before I get to anything. Everything that we have seen from Jet defenses over the last 10 years, we saw yesterday. No pass rush, missed tackles, killer penalties, although the John Franklin Myers roughing the passer.
BS. BS.
Okay? And then the TCS Ball Hero Bundle. It includes my favorite piece from Manscaped, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the TCS Special Edition. I don't mind that because it's like it's similar to when your uniform.
It's chrome. It's chrome.
Okay,
Mine was
fine.
like a black.
But the black is a joke. I mean, do we need black? Seriously, black, boom, and you're wearing the freaking black?
Well, it has my name on it.
Well, I understand that, and I get you.
What they say.
I understand. As you should. You should have it. You're an ex-Jet.
Right. This I knew. And by the way, this was their idea, not mine.
No. I just figured big money. I mean, you know, for me to wear, like, if they made me wear a Giant jersey, I don't know if that's happening. You know what I'm saying? .com. You know about the 5.0 Ultra lawnmower? Keeps everything nice and beautiful down below. Gives you the illusion of extra inches, which is certainly a good thing. We all love extra inches, even if it's only illusion. You know, we're all over that. You want to take care of that.
That pretty much explains everything you need to know about that. So I am savvy to how this goes. And I am telling you that that was the strangest part of their text exchange. Okay. That is another red flag, just like Brian Albert didn't come out of his house. Same thing. The fact that Brian Higgins does not respond after giving every indication that he liked and wanted Karen Read. That is weird. That's a red flag. The only other reason that I think Karen didn't think much of letting John go in the house where Higgins was without her is because Higgins does go out of his way to say, I don't judge you. Your secrets are safe with me. I can keep a secret. I promise. So I do think that she felt safer with Brian Higgins, maybe too safe. But as I'm telling you, Karen Reed does not have a lot of self-esteem. Okay. She doesn't. She just doesn't. No matter what she looks like to you, no matter what faces you think she makes, no matter how arrogant she might come off, no matter what freaking Wendy Murphy thinks about Karen Reed, she does not have a strong sense of self-esteem. She just doesn't. It's not a secure person, ladies and gentlemen. It is absolutely not. It's horrifying that we get to see this intimately into her life. I'm sure if you saw text messages that I had written in my worst moments, would be horrifying for me too. Thank God, many years ago now. But still, it's horrifying, I'm sure. And she's handling it with grace and integrity and much better than most of us probably would. But that doesn't change the fact this woman has very low self-esteem. So I don't think Karen Reed thought much about leaving John with Brian Higgins because she just doesn't realize these two men actually care about her. She doesn't get it, guys. And most women don't. Most women don't. And most men don't either, to be fair. Thinking about breaking up with someone, voicing frustration with a partner is quite different than executing a breakup. And from every indication that we have, certainly from the personality types of these two types of relationship styles that they have, it makes perfect sense that they would be fighting a lot. It makes perfect sense that John would be frustrated with Karen because of her incessant need for validation and because of her constant fears of abandonment. You know, one of the things that you got to love about New York City is this. It's so bad, you guys. I mean, I've tried to make it as affordable as I possibly can, the amount of delivery that I do, but I work so much. I just don't have the time to work so much, to be a PhD candidate, to be a mom, and also cook and for myself. I do clean for myself, sort of. It's just messy because I don't have time to organize my life. If you know anything about attachment styles, I'm sure there's a lot of pop culture, pop psychology talk about attachment. What attachment means, it has to do with when we're very young, between 0 and 2 years old, we have needs, obviously, and whether those needs are met predictably on a certain schedule with a certain frequency in a way that makes us as babies and young children feel safe. And when there's a lot of unpredictability, or when for whatever reason our needs are not met sufficiently, we can develop anxiety or attachment styles that are insecure. In other words, we don't necessarily feel safe in social settings or with other people. We don't necessarily trust that our needs are going to be met. And those types of interpersonal dynamics will carry with us throughout the entirety of our lives. Now, hopefully, as we become adults and we develop some self-awareness, even if we don't have inherently secure attachment styles, we can learn how to be in healthy, romantic, or close, intimate relationships with other people. They don't necessarily have to be romantic. This could be best friends or close friendships, right? So for some of us, when we get anxious in relationships, our go-to is to run away, is to avoid, is to shut down, is to go within, is to not communicate, but to kind of hide, work it out, try to work it out ourselves, and then come back to the relationship. But for anxious, insecure attachment styles, their tendency when they get anxious is to chase, is to want the other person to alleviate their fears, to tell them it's going to be okay, to tell them that they to tell them that they love them, that they want them, that they're beautiful, that of course they're not going anywhere, because the big fear is abandonment, is you're going to leave me. You're going to suddenly surprise me with something that I'm not going to be able to tolerate, and it's going to crush me. You're going to cheat on me. You're going to cheat on me. Oh my God, are you cheating on me? And we see all of those textbook behaviors from Karen. It also speaks a lot to Karen's desire to speak so publicly about her situation, to want to get her version of reality across to the world, to not tolerate being seen as a murderer, certainly as the person who killed her boyfriend. But she was so insecure. Now, I've done a lot of analysis of Karen Read, so it might be a little unfair for me to say some of these things without explaining it in more detail. But that I want to do a different day. We can talk more about who Karen Read is and why I believe what I believe about Karen a different time. That really is an entirely different discussion. Today, I just want to talk about two really important things. One, I came into this case a year ago. So the trial had just started. The first trial had just started. And that's when I did my 4-day long deep dive down the Karen Read rabbit hole that I'm sure many of you are just doing now, to try to figure out what the hell was going on. Now, the first thing that made me think that something was wrong from the police standpoint, that there was something very shady going on, was learning more about who Brian Albert was as a human being, learning that he was the elder of 7 children, learning that he was a 35-year veteran of the Boston Police Department, that he had been on Boston's Finest, just learning about this man, and then finding out that he did not come outside at any point on the morning of January 29th, told me that something is wrong, because I am 100%, and I don't say that lightly, I am absolutely sure that a man like Brian Albert absolutely has an inherent need to protect his family, to protect his wife, to be the patriarch of his universe, not just of his immediate family, but within his larger family with the 6 siblings that he has, right? So this is a dominant alpha male, and there is no world where that kind of man doesn't know that the entire police force and multiple fire trucks, whether their sirens are on or not, are on his very small front yard. Now, some of you know I was at 34 Fairview on Monday, 2 days ago. Went with my sister. We did the whole Canton tour. We went to CF McCarthy's. We went to D&E. I told you that I gave D&E Pizza a very high rating, and I am a pizza girl. I love pizza. If you want a pizza recommendation in New York City, I'm it. I'm telling you, I'm a pizza girl. I am an American New York style pizza girl, and D&E Pizza, their sauce is 4.5 out of 5. It's good. I'm telling you. It was a good piece of pizza. They were giant pieces of pizza. I didn't expect to see Chris Albert when I walked into the pizza shop. That was a bit of a surprise. But he was very kind to us. So what am I going to say, right? Your son is a murderer, probably. I mean, I didn't say that, obviously. My sister did see Colin. Again, none of this matters. This is not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that the lawn on 34 Fairview is exponentially smaller than you think. This is Fairview, on Fairview. Now, the house is definitely painted. It's painted blue, and they let the whole thing grow in.
Yeah, it doesn't look like anyone's living there.
So where are we at now? We are on, what number is that? 18.
Is that a Ford Edge?
Is that a Ford Edge?
It might have been, I don't know. No, there's
no idea what a Ford Edge looks like.
Oh no, that was a Chevy, I think. I have no idea.
Alright. it's coming
No,
up.
yeah,
here.
yeah.
This is 30. This
Here
is
it
it right
is.
here.
Oh, is that cars in the driveway?
All right.
There's people live here.
So
Look at how
that
small
is
this
30
yeah.
for Fairview.
Look at how small it is, dude.
Wow.
There's a body on the lawn right
Bro,
there.
that is small.
And they didn't see a
Sorry,
body.
there's a car coming.
Oh, it's not a car, it's a truck.
I know, I'm moving.
All right, now we're stopping.
Because I knew it was small. I could tell it was smaller than it looks in photos and videos. And in those 3D reenactments of the house that have been very helpful for many of us as we're trying to get a feel for the floor plan of the house, the lawn is exponentially smaller. It feels to me to be no more than 25 feet from the curb to those front steps on the front door that Jen McCabe is claiming to be staring outside of, looking at Karen's car. So it's tiny, which is just more evidence that there's absolutely no world where Brian Albert did not know that there was the cavalry on the front yard that morning. There is also no world where a German Shepherd, and now I say this with having done a lot of research on German Shepherds because of this case, experts on these dogs and what they're capable of because of years of breeding them to be aggressive. We know that even the most docile of German Shepherds can, out of nowhere, who have never hurt a soul, out of nowhere, can suddenly, you could have a knock at the door and open the door just slightly, and that German Shepherd can run out past you and jump on the person on your front porch. So they're aggressive dogs inherently, whether they are aggressive or not. So I have absolutely no doubt that if Chloe was inside of the house, the way that Brian Albert claims, sleeping by his side on the floor mat or in the closet, we would have heard her. You would hear her. We would hear her on the dash cam footage because you could probably hear my dog and she's 5 pounds. I promise you that if the cavalry was on our front yard, she would be barking just like every other dog on the planet, not to mention every German Shepherd on the planet. So this story is false. It's a lie. It is a fundamental lie. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. So then the question you have to ask is like, why are you lying about this? Who cares? Just come outside, right? If nothing nefarious is going on, these people are doing an awful lot of hiding, and it is bizarre, right? So, and that was only like 3 days in. That was 3 days into my learning about this case where I was like, all right, that's false. That's a lie. 100% that's a lie. So why are they lying? And that's, of course, where I picked up my coverage of the trial last year and then became completely hooked, just totally hooked, right? And obviously now we're at the point where I'm at now. So I knew that there had been, I guess at that point, 2 years of motions and battling in the court, discovery materials just disappearing and no videos, still to this day, no videos, right? Only these edited garbage videos that are suddenly appearing now after the trial is over, or, mirrored videos that appear during the trial. I mean, it's disgraceful what has gone on in this case. Because I came in at a year ago and missed in live real time all of the action, all of the pretrial motions that occurred in that 2 years before, I hadn't seen this speech that was given in July of 2023 by David Yannetti. I went to try to find this on YouTube, to try to find it in its original form, but I wasn't able to. So where I heard it was Turtle Boy played it. And he was playing it in reaction to Yuri Buchanan saying that he heard something about Michael Proctor and his relationships at a pretrial motion in 2023. And so Turtle Boy was playing this clip to show that Yuri Buchanan was in court on this particular day. This is not only an incredible speech by Yannetti, which just elevates him in your mind immediately, but it also speaks to where things were in this case at that time. So what was going on in the year before, from, January 29, 2022 to July of 2023? Remember, the first trial started in the spring of 2024, a little over a year ago. So that gives you a sense of where this is placed in the timeline. And you're going to hear from Yannetti what was going on up until then. And I think it's really important for any newcomers, and by newcomers, I mean anybody, from the last year to now who's not aware of what was going on in the pretrial, saga of the Karen Read case, to hear this. Unfortunately, I was not able to get a clean copy. I had to steal it from Turtle Boy. I tried to, not steal from his show. I tried to take him out as much as I could, but you're going to hear little clips of him in the background. So I apologize for that. If I could have found a clean copy, I would have used it. I just could not find anything else. And I think it's so important that people hear this speech as much as possible in its entirety. And so I'm going to play it for you here now. It's only about 11 minutes, but I think it's an 11 minutes that is well worth your time. Just before Yannetti gives this speech, Adam Lally gets up and makes a cowardly argument for a gag order on the defense team. So this is a response by Yannetti to Adam Lally asking the judge for a gag order on the defense.
An attorney's duties do not begin inside the courtroom door. An attorney may take reasonable steps to defend a client's reputation and reduce the adverse consequences of an indictment, especially in the face of a prosecution deemed unjust or commenced with improper motives. Those are not my words, Your Honor. Those are the words of Supreme Court Justice Kennedy giving the majority opinion in the controlling case of Gentile versus State Bar of Nevada. The knowledge that every criminal trial is subject to contemporaneous review in the form of public opinion is an effective restraint on possible abuse of judicial power. Without publicity, all other checks are insufficient. In comparison of publicity, all other checks are of small account. Public awareness and criticism have even greater importance where, as here, they concern allegations of police corruption. Again, the words of Justice Kennedy. As for me, Your Honor, I have 3 words for this court. 3 words forming one question. How dare they? How dare the prosecution try to prohibit defense counsel from doing our jobs? How dare they ask this court to take away our First Amendment right to free speech? How dare they try to trample on my client's Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial and her 14th Amendment rights to due process of law? How dare they? Your Honor, I have represented Karen Read since January 29th, 2022. I was hired not long after she was released from the hospital under psychiatric observation because she was that shocked and that distraught after finding her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, lying hopelessly cold and bloody on Brian Albert's property. From the beginning, she has faced a prosecution team that did everything they could to poison the well of public opinion. Before she was initially arrested on manslaughter charges, I formally contacted the Massachusetts State Police in writing and promised that if they took out charges against her, my client would fully cooperate. I confirmed that I would walk her in and surrender her wherever they would like me to do so. And what did they do? They completely ignored that promise of cooperation, insisted on arresting her so that they could parade her before the media. They got their perp walk and the poisoning of the well began. And almost immediately thereafter, no less than Superintendent-in-Chief of the Boston Police Department, Gregory Long, came out immediately in public to declare that the state police and the Norfolk DA's office had arrested the person responsible for John's death. Superintendent Long did not caution that someone accused of a crime is innocent until proven guilty. He did not caution the public to keep an open mind. He did just the opposite. he announced in public for everyone to hear that in his opinion, Karen Reed was guilty, and let's pat the prosecution on the back. That statement was broadcast on almost every media outlet. Posted to the Boston Police official Facebook account. It was posted to the Boston Police official Twitter account. It was posted to the Boston Police official website. Right from the start, the Boston Police announced that Karen Reed was guilty. Now, I ask you, Your Honor, where was Mr. Lally after that statement was made? What cautionary instruction did the Norfolk DA or the Canton Police Chief make then? Nothing. We can only take from their deafening silence that the prosecution was quite comfortable when the media narrative was that Karen did. No request for a gag order then.
Nope.
There was only silent approval. But of course, that was only the beginning. Immediately after Karen's arraignment in Stoughton District Court on February 2 of 2022, Superintendent Long once again seized the opportunity to speak to the media in full uniform, conveying that he was speaking in an official capacity. He lamented the loss of a fellow officer, quote, especially under circumstances like this, end quote. It was obvious to anyone listening what he meant. Circumstances of his girlfriend supposedly killing him, because that's what he already told the media. So from the start, they controlled the narrative, and as long as they did, all was well. They had Karen Reed right where they wanted her, and with the public being told, there's nothing to see here. She hit him with her car. She's guilty. Just trust us. And they were able to control the narrative and get away with it, I suggest to the court, because they withheld discovery from us for months. In the meantime, Canton Police Chief Rafferty was allowed to publicly state that the facts revealed by the defense were just, quote, sensational accounts. They really should just trust the prosecution. Jennifer McCabe's attorney was allowed to publicly state that the defense attorneys were just spinning it and it's going nowhere. He told the world without evidence that the whole scenario is baseless. The Norfolk County DA is allowed to suggest regarding the timing of Jen McCabe's 2:27 a.m. Google search, which we can prove without any doubt. The Norfolk County DA suggested to the media that we may not have interpreted the raw data correctly. And then, of course, both Chief Rafferty and the Norfolk DA spokesman, David Trout, claimed that they were ethically constrained from commenting, but that didn't stop them from commenting anyway, publicly stating essentially that the defense is not to be trusted. So again, I ask you, Your Honor, where was the prosecution when all of that was going on? Where was the request for a gag order then? It's a rhetorical question, of course, because there were none. The prosecution was perfectly happy to have potential jurors hear all of this unfairly prejudicial information about Karen Reed because it would help their pathetically weak case brought against them. Cases pathetically weak because they've arrested the wrong person, yet inexplicably they refused to admit it. They were quite happy with the press this case was getting when it was in their favor, and their minions were out doing their work with the media. Of course, once the evidence, started to trickle in, the tide turned, and it did turn in a big way. In May of this year, Your Honor, we displayed the injuries to John O'Keefe's arm, I should say. Injuries that cannot be explained by a sudden motor vehicle collision. And all of a sudden, people took notice, and they started to question, hey, what really happened here? That was a seminal moment when everyone started to realize Karen Reed did not do this, but somebody else did. And for the purposes of this motion, it's important to note that the statements that we've talked about made by the Commonwealth and its representatives, some of those were made after we announced the existence of this exculpatory evidence in court. And it is also salient that our statements were made in court. In court. Their statements were made out of court. Can you imagine the hypocrisy of the prosecution now coming before this court to suggest that a gag order is appropriate? How dare they? Not only is it not appropriate, it's unconstitutional. Not only is it unconstitutional, it is anti-constitutional. Not only is the U.S. citizens have a First Amendment right to speak out consistent with our ethical duties as lawyers representing a client who's been falsely charged with a crime. We believe, moreover, that we don't just have that right. We have a duty to defend our client against the misinformation and the prejudicial statements put forth by the prosecution and their allies. Our founding fathers recognized that the power of the state is immense and can be far too powerful. So they enacted the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights. In its motion, the Commonwealth cites certain cases to support its request that the parties be gagged, but none of those cases stand for the proposition that a criminal defendant be gagged. Cases address situations where the prosecutions acted impermissibly in poisoning the well against the defendant like they did in this case. The prosecution has the resources. They have access to local and state police departments. They have access to crime laboratories, and none of those resources cost them a dime. Karen Reed, on the other hand, has been forced to defend herself on her own dime. And by dime, I mean hundreds of thousands of dollars when she has no income as a result of these false charges. Thank God that a legal defense fund has been established to help her defend herself. To do so without the help of perfect strangers and good Samaritans.
Yes, let's
who
go.
recognize the worthiness
Free Karen
of
Reed.
fighting the injustice in this case. So, the Commonwealth's motion for a gag order is is hypocritical, it's unconstitutional, it's unsupported by case law. But let's shift for a moment, Judge, and talk about what would it accomplish. Will a gag order stop the media coverage of this case as I hear cameras going off behind my shoulder? Look at this courtroom. Does the prosecution think that if they stuff a gag in the mouths of Karen Reed's attorneys, that these good reporters behind me are then going to go away?
This is excellent.
Do they think that the general public's going to go away? I think it's quite clear there is zero chance of that. The press is onto them. The press is onto this case. The press is not going away. The public is now quite interested and vocal. If you, Your Honor, the extrajudicial conversation will not end. It will only intensify. A gag order will simply mean that we can't participate in it to correct misinformation and defend our client. And consider what that means. It means that the McCabe's and the Alberts and the Proctors of the world and all of their followers who have their heads in the sand and refuse to consider the outlandishness of the prosecution, say whatever they want.
Yes.
They can talk about burying the body of reporters under a judge's house. They can slander and libel and smear.
Me, I'm the reporter.
We would be powerless to respond. How does that make any sense?
Doesn't.
We are well aware of our ethical duties. We have complied with them. We will continue to comply with the rules of professional responsibility and criminal procedure. We did not create this media circus, the prosecution did. We have every right to respond to their lies and misrepresentations. And in closing, Your Honor, it is said that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We ask you, Your Honor, no, we implore you, not to partially block out that sunlight by prohibiting Karen Reed's attorneys from defending her both inside
Amen.
and outside the court.
Amen.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.